We're loving this tour.
Love Jesus, love the tour.
Yeah. So I'm Chris Hall, and I'm co-author of this book, Jesus for President with Shane, and co-speaker on the tour.
Yeah. We like doing stuff because the whole thing's really been about community and creating alternatives together, so the books.
In a way, it's a very specific alternative to like doing like a so-called like book signing tour, like where we would go to like Barnes and Noble and like read a few excerpts or something. This is in a most true sense.
We're bored of that.
Yeah, I mean this is an ecclesial tour in a way. This is meant for the formation of the church. And so one person, he's a theologian, he said, kind of what you're doing is a little bit of popular catechesis, which is the formation of the Christian mind. But that sort of brought up the larger question, which is Christians in general don't fit into the systems of this world. Like teaching people to love their enemies and forgive those who harm them and bless those who persecute you. That just gets laughed out of any debate, So realizing that sort of made us look at this sort of when Christians said, we're fools for Christ, like you guys are all so wise, but, the early Christians were fools in the face of empire, and so that's almost some of the tongue-in-cheek or foolishness of calling Jesus your president.
A lot of it is thinking through how we can kind of help to participate in the change we want to see in the world rather than just elect politicians to do that for us, and it seems that Christianity at its best has been people that are about bringing the kingdom on earth, and not kind of pointing fingers at the Roman leaders and saying they need to do this for us. Because we don't want to be people that just preach to the choir or become self-righteous and say we don't want to have anything to do with you or whatever, write people off. Because we can, I look at a lot of folks at Willow and I can see myself in them. I can see my own insulation from the poverty of this world that I never saw growing up, and things like that. So I think what we hope to be is one more invitation to try to rethink what it means to be the church, and that's what Willow Creek started.
Speaking of the Amish, considering the way global capitalism has turned out, especially its industrial edge, you almost feel like the Amish are like far advanced, and like they saw what was coming, and it's time for the Christians from all other denominations to at least give them a hearing and learn. Maybe the piggyback connection with that is a larger ecumenism in us, which is this desire to build the bridges where they've normally fallen apart. Unity in the church needs to be something that is really a concern for Christians, because that disunity that is so alive now is part of the violence in the world, that we can't get along with other people who are sharing the body and blood of Christ. And so
one of the things that I think that we've seen too is the political conversation has really become very dry, and very stale, and just something that liberals and conservatives have in common is they have very little joy and imagination, and so what we really want to do is celebrate an alternative political imagination, and an alternative political embodiment that's not just a party, we say that we kill your people of God, that our political witness is who we are, as a people that are transnational and have different ways of looking at evil or interacting with it, different ways of thinking of economics, and so all of those are a part of the imagination of the church, and that's why, even preaching and theology doesn't need to be boring. It can, and at its best, has been performed, like a symphony, and so to have music and lament and art all through it is what this whole thing's about.
Well, I would say a little bit like judging from the way the early Christians lived, I think that's a wonderful way of determining what the Gospels and what Jesus' life meant. And what it meant in the lives of the early Christians is the broader culture saw them as atheists, which was treason. And their atheism of the early Christians meant that they didn't believe in the gods of Rome and the religion of the state because they didn't put their hope in the powers. Now that is a huge thing that Christians really need to spend some time thinking about and realizing that these Christians were seen as faithless. And in a way that's kind of similar to the whole trajectory of the Christian or Judeo-Christian tradition, which is that like Abraham and Sarah became relevant to the world when they like left it. Like they came out of Ur of the Chaldeans. They left the empire on a journey out into the wilderness for God to like form a whole new people that didn't have a king, And so Christians don't fit in, and they will be seen as stupid and idiotic. And that's why they said, you guys are fools. And they said, we indeed are fools, we're fools for Christ. And that's a great thing, because in the face of empire, it seems like the only rational response is to become a fool.
I would say one of the things we could do is say, how has Christianity done when it's been in charge of everything?
Good question. That could be answered historically.
Yeah, and when Christianity has ruled and dominated the world, it's been terrible, and because it loses the very character of Jesus, which is to go around washing feet and to serve others, and rather than to be power over others. He says, the Lord's of the Gentile, power over people, but you're to be servants and even to love your enemies to the point of death. So certainly that's not a great plan for leading a superpower, but that should tell us something. And really, you can see in the ruins of post-Christian Europe and other places, like where everything has been Christian, nothing is really Christian anymore. You lose the contrast culture of the church, and as the early Christians said, Christianity is a beautiful thing as long as it's hated by the world. So we sort of have this promise that our kingdom's not of the world, that the world is going to find the way that we live very peculiar, and maybe if we don't have some sort of collision, we should ask ourselves: are we still living in ways that don't compute to the status quo?